Secretly recorded from deep inside the bowels of a decommissioned missile silo, we bring you the man, one single man who wants to bring light to the darkness and dark to the lightness. Although he's not always right, he is always certain. So now, with security protocols in place, the protesters have been forced back behind the barricades and the blast doors are now sealed. Without further delay, let me introduce you to the host of HuttCast, Mr. Tim Huttner.
Thank you, Sergeant at Arms. You can now take your post.
Welcome to HuttCast. Today's episode, Elk Meat. And we have in our studio elk aficionado, the guy, Scott Salonek with Elk Marketing. So stand by, HuttCast will be right with you. Need a quick, healthy boost to start your day? Try Superfuel. Superfuel by Casmo is loaded with vitamins and healthy ingredients that will give you a quick, healthy boost. Make Superfuel a great-tasting, low-calorie addition to your daily regimen. Order Superfuel at www.superfuel.me or call 833-FUEL-X12, FUEL-X12, or 833-383-5912, Super Fuel. Welcome back to HuttCast. In our pre-roll, I described to you who we have in the studio today is graced us with his presence, and we're going to talk to him today about elk meat. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, well, thanks for coming out. I mean, it's a long day, and then we got to go and record after work. You know, I get that. So let's start out a little bit about what's going on in the beginning. Now, elk meat itself is a, what do you call it, the other white meat type of thing?
Well, no, I'd say the other red meat.
I was coining a phrase.
Yeah.
And tell me when you started with this.
Well, back in 1992, I came home one day and told the wife that I was going to get some elk. And that's how it started. I got my first animals in 1992. Back in those days, I cut meat at a packing plant. Was actually in the meat cutting business through packing plant or retail grocery marketing for probably about 30 years altogether. And I seen an opportunity back then to take some of the lower genetic animals in the industry and turn them into steaks, burger, roasts, and it later developed into also adding a meat stick summer sausage and like a ground burger product. So that's how it all started, and we've expanded considerably since.
That's very interesting. How did the wife take this when she heard you were going to go into the elk business?
I tell you what, I've been in this business for 30 years, and I wouldn't say that she's hated every minute of it, but it hasn't been what you would call a true blessing. However, I mean, if you look at the whole picture moving backwards, it has developed into a very nice kind of a sideline business for myself.
Okay. Now, we're all seeing the kung fu at the supermarkets, right? The high prices of meat, it's all over the place. How does that work for you guys?
Well, that has just recently started here, probably over the last 6-8 months, where beef prices are currently going through the roof, and I haven't really, up until this stage, I haven't really paid attention to the beef prices, compared to what an elk steak would be. Most of my steak marketing, that has kind of tailed off a little bit. We're losing a lot of breeders in the industry. Some of the regulations are getting quite a bit tougher for the individual producer and farmer to raise the animal. And we're kind of losing that pool of animals to pick from, you would say.
I can imagine it would be quite tough. Now, does the elk market follow the beef market at all?
Not at all. Not at all. Basically, it's just supply and demand on the animal. And we started it out to try and increase the market for the producer. And most of this meat, if you look at some of the high-end restaurants that are out there,
Yeah.
elk meat is considered a true upper echelon red meat. And
Because of why?
real soft texture. The meat itself is a real soft, exquisite taste. And the other real factor on the meat itself is elk is considered roughly 75% leaner than beef. And when I say that, I mean a quarter-pound beef burger has 26 grams of fat, where a quarter-pound elk burger has 6 grams of fat.
Holy cow.
So the lean qualities and health benefits from eating elk are far superior to beef.
Now, I remember you brought me some of this elk meat back at the shop, and I tried to prepare it, but I did it like a steak. And I think that was my biggest drawback, because I didn't know how to prepare a very lean meat like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you smoke them? Do you cook them? Do you fry them? I mean, what is the ave gras of this?
Well, personally, I also like to do most of the time do a grilling type process.
Mm-hmm.
Throw it on the grill. I treat it exactly like I would a beefsteak. And the big factor with it is elk has to be cooked either rare or medium rare.
Okay.
Because it is so lean that if you cook it well done, you're drying the meat out so bad that it almost makes it unchewable.
Oh, so it toughens it up as well?
Correct.
I see. So see, I do a lot of smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the mean average temperature that you would want in the center of this meat?
Oh, probably about 135.
And do you let it rest there, or do you peak at 135?
I would take it off your heat at 135.
Okay.
Because it'll probably gain another 5 degrees yet.
Oh, yeah. Easy fly flare.
Right.
Easy. Okay. And the same type of spices, perhaps?
Spices, some sort of a sauce. What I like is a teriyaki.
Ah.
And if you take that and mix it with real butter and kind of melt it all together and just baste your steak or roast while it's cooking, you can baste it with that or serve it with some sort of a sauce right when you put it on a plate.
Okay. I understand. So leaner is better. I mean, of course, for the arteries. And it's a decent marble, what I saw, the piece you brought us or the stuff you brought for us. Very nice. I just was novice at preparing it because I thought it would be something more or less than, I don't know, what I've used to been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, how about smoking it? Do you ever smoke, do they have briskets in elk?
Yeah, you would, but to me that would be, it could be something that could be smoked, and then the best way to serve that would be probably some sort of a sauce on it and then shred it real, kind of like a shredded pork sandwich or a shredded beef sandwich.
Like a pulled pork?
Right.
And what's the best wood to smoke with on these?
I would use either cherry or apple myself.
Really?
Yep.
So nothing hardcore like mesquite or some of the hardwoods?
Oh, you certainly can.
It's kind of a taste thing?
Yeah, to me, I just like the flavor that apple or cherry gives you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Certainly, I could see where that would be a win. All right. See, what are some of the challenges of steaks with this? I mean, burgers. I mean, there's so much to know. Should a guy treat it just like normal steak?
Yes, that's what I would do. Yeah, and your burgers, same thing. I mean, you can certainly add a little more heat on a burger, but I would not do a well done. I did the concession business for years when we first got this the meat business going, and back then, if you got a 4-ounce burger and you cooked the death out of it, it was like chewing on a hockey puck.
Oh, jeez.
So the best thing to do is keep it on the pink side.
Okay, the 130-ish.
Even 140 then on a burger.
Ah, okay. When you grind up a burger for like a hamburger, do you put it the same process or how does it work?
It's the exact same process of doing a regular beef burger. Goes through the same grinder, the same machine. Hand patted is certainly better than machine patted. It doesn't compress the meat like the machine does.
Ah, okay.
And you get a much tenderer bite. Even on a burger, you can tell the difference.
Okay. What I'm thinking now is, how would one get this type of material? Where do you buy it?
Well, through my website, there's not a lot of retail outlets. I did years back have the product in Lund's Byerly's, and it ended up being most of your retail outlets on an exotic meat like this, they want you to guarantee the sale, meaning that if they buy 12 units in a box,
Okay.
you have to guarantee that all 12 are going to sell. And in my instance, we kept it as a fresh product in the store, in other words, never frozen. And it just didn't work. It didn't work out for elk marketing because I would always be guaranteeing like 3 units out of a case, and it ate up the profit margin. So I required them to go to a frozen product, and they didn't want to do that. So eventually the item got taken out of the store. And since then, I haven't tried to expand on that product because I'm having a hard time keeping enough product for my snack meat market.
Okay.
You know, the sausages and the snack sticks and chopped and formed jerky.
Okay.
And that has taken off real well. So I've kind of moved away from supplying a grocery store for it. I also ran into a problem where it's hard to get a distributor to take on that product because the sales, you have to have a certain amount of sales before everybody wants to be involved.
Okay.
Because obviously, clearly, if you're selling, as an example, if you're selling 3 cases of beef burgers and a half a case of elk burgers, it makes it really difficult for everybody involved to make it work in their program. You just don't have enough volume for the product to keep on, to leave it on the shelf.
If there was that volume, could you maintain a supply?
Absolutely not. Not at this stage anymore.
Oh, so
after my 18 years in having elk marketing move to the snack meat line, currently we use probably about 5,000 pounds a month just in our snack meat line. And there's enough breeders that have gone out of the business that can't make it work for them, that they just cannot continually supply the market.
So that's a no, you couldn't keep up a supply, or that's a...
No, I don't think I could.
Oh, okay. No matter how much you increased your operation?
Correct. I personally don't raise all the animals myself.
Ah.
I have to buy from all the particular breeders in the United States. And eventually you run into logistics problems, processing plant problems, where some of the regulations are making it extremely difficult for even the plants to process the animal nowadays.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've, in Minnesota especially, it's come to currently the processing plants, they cannot get rid of the offal, all the byproducts from the slaughtering process.
Okay.
And you have to have a rendering company, or not, I shouldn't say that, that was a mistake. You have to have a garbage hauler take it to a landfill nowadays. All the rendering companies will not take the product because of the so-called CWD that's out there.
And fill us in, what is that acronym?
It's called chronic wasting disease.
Oh.
It is a disease that the animal can get. All the animals that are processed are tested for it. However, because the rendering company will not deal with it anymore, there is no outlet for the offal unless you go to the garbage hauler. And that particular process has gotten really expensive. Most producers, for me, a garbage tank or a big dumpster, I would call it, to process all the animals, would probably run $1,200, $1,300, and I need to run 50, 60 animals through that thing to make it cash flow for me. Recently, probably a couple months ago, I had a breeder that wanted to do 10 animals, and that $1,200, I mean, all of them costs go back to the producer, and he was going to be paying $120 $120 a head to get rid of the offal.
What do they do for beef to get rid of that stuff?
It all goes into your pet food products.
And they do not do that with elk?
They won't do that with elk, correct.
What do they do with deer in deer hunting season?
All of that goes to a landfill.
Really? So
Yes.
I see here you got in the notes that you wrote me that these are part of the deer family?
Deer, elk, moose, all the cervid members of the deer family. Yes. And all of those members, no longer will the rendering company take any of the offal from them.
Oh. So then you just got to pay someone. And I get, I see that would be a thing. Now, you said logistics earlier. Is fuel prices kicking your butt on this deal?
That just recently came into play, so we will be seeing that in some of the shipping rates. Most of our snack meats go out on UPS. We ship on a weekly basis, and we also ship to some of our bigger customers. We ship by the pallet. So, yes, we will be seeing some fuel surcharges coming up. And when you say that, I just had a customer yesterday, or Monday, I guess it was, where we shipped a fairly good-sized box. It was about an 80-pound box of top sirloin butts for a wild game feed. Okay. And the surcharge, just the surcharge alone on this 80-pound box was like $28. So that obviously gets passed on to the individual buying the product. And on this particular case, the shipping was like $180, and the meat was $310. So the shipping is it's getting, in this instance with $5 diesel fuel, it's getting carried away.
Certainly takes the P rate out of profit, doesn't it?
It does.
Unfortunately, you still got to maintain your levels, and if you're not in business, you got to maintain your gross overhead every time. So it gets passed on, and things get out of control, and thus we have an inflationary issue that goes mental. Mm-hmm. All right, shifting gears here. In a world, I don't want to sound like that guy on TV. In a world, what would anybody want to replace their beef diet with a elk diet?
Oh, certainly your individuals with heart issues or high cholesterol. I mean, it would certainly help your overall health. Okay.
And eventually, like you said, the money's going to catch up to these guys. Do you ship these burgers cross world in a freezer? How would the end user ever get a hold of your products?
Well, number one, you'd end up getting a hold of the website, healthylelkmeat.com. And we do ship primarily during the summertime. It does get extremely difficult because you do have the heat to deal with, and we cannot put the CO2 packages. They can't go in an air shipment. So we generally use the frozen gel packs and always ship either first or second day service, where within a 48-hour period, I can pretty much pack the box with enough gel packs, styrofoam bead, the little styrofoam peanut deals, and get it to the consumer in a safe manner. In the wintertime, we got a little bit more leeway just because it's generally cold, depending on where what part of the country we go to.
What is the average meat go bad time on these? Let's say it's a 70-degree day, and when it goes bad, do you have a time limit?
First off, I will explain to the customer that during the summer, during your heat issues or your heat months, I will not go anything over 2 days.
Okay.
And if you, the customer, wants that service, if you all of a sudden say, hey, I'm okay with paying 4-day service or ground service, and it should happen to take 4 or 5 days to get there, I don't guarantee that product. And we have, in the past, had some product. I mean, everything is humanly done, so even on just say a 2-day ship, all of a sudden there has been some instances where that package gets misplaced in a truck or the only way I get reimbursement for it is if it's a 2-day service, and for instance, say UPS takes 4 days to get it there, then I do have some recourse to come back.
Have you seen these little mini tiny thermometers that record as soon as you turn them on, and you can throw them in a package, tells you high limit, low limit, and they're about $2, $3 made in China stuff. You ever use those?
I have not used them. I have heard about them, though, yes.
Okay, because we use them in some of the transmissions we do. They can't get to a certain temperature, and believe it or not, a transmission, if it gets too cold, it'll ruin it. And I'm like, okay, so one came in a package, and I thought, well, this is kind of cool. I looked it up, did the homework on it, and I'm like, yeah, this would probably work a lot of areas. So that's why I asked you about that. I mean, because if it takes 2 days before it spoils, and let's say one day of that is you're out of ice, you still might be able to save that and not throw it away.
Right, yeah. The critical factor would be you'd have to express to your customer that, hey, this product may get to you, and it might be chilled or frosty, but not frozen hard. So that would be an important factor if you knew that all of a sudden, and I believe what you're talking on those thermometers, you can get a reading on that through like some sort of an app where you can tell the temperature that it never got over, say, 45 degrees.
Yeah, I think the ones we had at the shop were what's the highest one and what's the lowest.
Right.
So then you could go in there and make that judgment call at that point.
Yeah, certainly. If you all of a sudden the highest temperature was 60 degrees in the meat, I personally wouldn't consume that for sure, and I wouldn't recommend that it would be done.
So healthy So healthy elkmeat.com, is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there a phone number that associates with that?
The office number, 763-428-8561.
763-428-8561 for healthy meat products. Elk, right?
Yep.
Okay. What am I not asking here? Because I am the clay. Mold me into what I don't know about elk meat. Why don't people do this with buffalo?
The buffalo market, if you believe it or not, it is actually a much bigger thing than the elk meat.
Okay.
The buffalo market has been pushing the meat industry for probably the last 30, 40 years, and they've actually, the animal is raised specifically for the meat products, where elk, the meat is considered a low-level revenue product for the animal. Most of the animals are raised for either breeding, or one of the main markets for the animal is the hunt market on the trophy bulls.
I see. Not much of a trophy. Just go out to a pen and pop one off, is there?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you go to some of these ranches, I mean, I know of a few ranches that are 8,000 acres.
No.
So if you're looking for a particular animal, just say you want to shoot a 410-inch bull, you may have to work on finding that animal in that large of an area. I do tend to agree with you that it wouldn't be much fun shooting one in a 50 or 100-acre pen.
Right. Okay, so we've covered the beef, we've covered buffalo, we've covered elk. Do we need to cover the deer stuff at, like, say, hunting season, or is that kind of like the same thing?
If you look at elk versus venison, whitetail deer,
okay,
the whitetail deer, this is my take on it, I guess. To me, the whitetail deer has a much gamier taste than elk. And one of the big factors that most whitetail deer also bring to the table is, as the meat cools a little bit, it tends to get a kind of a waxy, tallowy taste in the roof of your mouth.
Ah, okay.
And you would not notice that in elk. Elk has a very unique flavor, and there is virtually zero gamey taste to it.
Walk me through the process. You are going to raise or buy an elk. Tell me how this works.
Well, first off, to say you're going to raise one, you can't. It's going to be a little more difficult. You got to have some ground. You do have to register with the Minnesota Board of Animal Health. They will come out and inspect your fence and make sure you got fences that are adequate to handle the animal. They have to be a certain 8 feet tall. You're inspected annually to make sure that they maintain that 8-foot height for the fence. Currently, the DNR has also been involved in that fencing inspection, and we have, once a year, we have an annual inspection, and Board of Animal Health staff, along with somebody from the DNR, whether it's a licensed DNR game warden, which I will add is against the Constitution to have that extra officer present.
And we'll cover that in the next episode. I want to go there.
Okay.
Okay, they're at your place. They're checking your fence.
Yep.
You grow them for how long?
You grow the animal, you mean?
Yeah.
Most elk are up to a harvestable weight for the meat industry at about 24, 30 months.
So a couple years into it.
Yep.
Buying a lot of food for these animals. Yeah, what am I missing? So when you harvest, are you take them to the butcher?
Everything has to go through a inspected facility. The animal has to be taken to that facility in a livestock trailer, just like you would be hauling cattle to a processing plant. Same thing.
Okay.
You need some sort of a facility at your property to get them in that trailer. I mean, they're not readily going to want to go in there.
Sure.
So generally, most people have some sort of a handling system, which is kind of an alleyway designed to run them into a building, and then from the building you can push them into a trailer through an assortment of swing gates and different cubicles.
So you're corralling them. You're playing cowboy.
Correct.
They're in the trailer. You're hauling them to the same state. You're hauling them out of state.
Most of the time, it's best to get them processed in the state that you are in. It's not a real good thing to haul an animal 300, 400, 500 miles.
Okay. And you tell this processor a cut list?
I generally always have a cut list on how I want it, whether or not I want ribeye steaks or whole ribeyes, New York strips. Do we take the hind leg of the animal, the hind quarter? And in elk, we call it a boneless Denver leg. That's how restaurants ask for the product.
Okay.
And that consists of top sirloin, top round. It's called a sirloin tip, eye round, and bottom round. Those 5 muscles all go into a bag, cryovac, and boxed up. Most restaurants use most of that leg for like making medallions or a sliced French sandwich.
Okay.
And on all your steak items, your New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin, ribeye, those are all cut into portion steaks.
What is the gross weight of an average processed, finalized in your freezer?
Most animals at processing are probably about 500 pounds live. And once that is hanging, we call it hanging on the rail, which means it's all skin off, head off, feet off. Everything's ready to be cut into individual portions. Most animals will carcass at about 300 pounds from a live animal.
Okay, so we lose 200.
Yep. And then from the 200, or from the 300, I should say, we get about 70% of that in boneless meat. So that 500-pound animal will end up being about 200, 210 in boneless actual meat. And if you take it down a little further than that, 70% of the 210-pound boneless is actually grinding for burger.
Okay. It's more of the gristly stuff-ish?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say gristly because it goes through the grinder, and elk meat, it's probably straight off the animal. I would say it's probably 85 to 90% lean. So I wouldn't call it gristly, but there's just not really much else to make out of it other than either ground, or you could make it into summer sausage, snack sticks. There's no steaks to make out of it. You could make some stew meat, I guess, but...
Okay. All right, so we covered it from cradle to grave here. In your freezer, about 270 in pounds. Starts out a 500-pound animal, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What am I missing here? Let's see, that. So at 270, what does a full-blown cow cost? Do we say cow?
Yeah, most of the animals processed for the meat industry are always females because the bulls carry a much higher value to the trophy market.
Because they can make more.
They can make more money because individuals will go to the hunt ranches and pay good money to harvest one. Where all your females, I mean, either she's for breeding or she's for the meat market.
Okay, $270. Now, if you're quoting today's prices, I just want to do the math here. $270 on the weight in your freezer. What does that normally run?
Most of the time, we will sell, I can sell individual steaks, and we do.
Well, if we bought the whole thing.
If you bought the whole animal,
yes,
you're going to be looking at about a $5 per pound hanging on the rail.
So
in other words,
times 5.
$5 times 300-pound carcass.
$270. So $13.50 for a full-blown cow.
Correct.
Processed in your deal.
Yep.
I don't see that as too far off, do you?
The only other additive you have there is you would be paying the processor to cut it however you want it.
Oh, so the cut list is extra?
Yes.
Ah.
Yes. Yep. From elk marketing, you would be buying the half of an animal, and then the processing plant, you would be writing them a check for their work. And that might vary a little bit depending on how you do it. I mean, if you go to them and say, I want each individual steak run through a roll stock or Cryovac machine,
okay,
or to save a little money, you could say maybe my family of 4, let's put 4 steaks in each package.
Right.
That will help them on time and, material processing.
And you can make tubes of hamburger type?
Yeah, you tell them that you want 1 pound or 1.5 pounds or whatever you want, and then they would package it accordingly.
Now, I don't remember what I bought a half, and I can't remember what the processing fee was because it was all put in the same end package for us. What's the processing fee these days?
Most of the time, right in that 300 area.
Okay,
on a whole animal, about $1 a pound.
So $13.50 plus another $3. So now you're getting about $1,700-$1,800.
Yep. But if you go out west to hunt one, you might be paying $7,000-$8,000.
I don't like any meat that much. And if it's to the point where that bad in the world where we got to hunt our meat, I sure as hell ain't paying for it. We're just going to harvest one. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a grease monkey, right?
There you go.
Okay, we are 31 minutes and 4 seconds into this first segment with Scott Salonek and Healthy Elk Meat. We're going to talk about, in the next segment, lead us in on that.
Well, some of the challenges that are facing the industry on my side of it, and actually it's a more serious deal to the breeder himself, because some of the rules that are being put on this industry are making it extremely difficult to profit by raising the animal.
Okay, well, let's cut this there. We'll make a commercial break right here and be back soon. Stand by for HuttCast, and we will catch up on this next segment. Buying a gun is no ordinary purchase. Whether you're a hunter, competitive shooter, or self-defense is your priority, there are many kinds of guns and many kinds of training programs. You use your brain all the time. You will rarely need to use your gun. Before you find yourself in a situation where you need to make a critical decision, make sure your training is the best you can get. It could be the difference between life and death, or freedom or detention. For the best quality training, check out permittocarry.us. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin or even Florida, give Gene German a call, 612-388-2403. That's Permit to Carry US. Or call Gene German at 612-388-2403. Welcome back to HuttCast. In our studio is Scott Salonek. Let's ask some questions about what we don't know the DNR's doing. So, Scott, why don't you lead us in with this?
Well, some of the issues that are facing the industry about raising the animal itself is elk are considered of the cervid family. And in Minnesota, the whitetail deer is also considered of the cervid family. And as some may know, chronic wasting disease, which is called CWD, has faced the industry since in Minnesota. 2002 was the first case. And we have since then, I think the first case in a wild deer was in 2010. Our state officials are getting extremely uptight about the spread of chronic wasting disease.
Okay.
And what chronic wasting disease is a form of, it's called a TSE, transmissible spongiform encephalophysis. It's a form of this TSE, which is associated with like scabies in sheep. There's been association to mad cow in the bovine industry. Now, when I say CWD, it only affects cervids. This particular, I would call it a particular form. They're all associated to the TSE, but CWD is specific to cervid deer family members.
Okay.
Elk, deer, moose.
Hoofed animals?
Yes. Yeah, all of the deer family.
Okay.
And because it does affect the white-tailed deer, and we have that animal in the population in the wild, our Minnesota DNR is getting extremely unrested about how it can be transmitted, or the farmed industry, because there's no way to, you could keep the deer in a pen from touching the deer in the wild by having two fences, but science has shown that that doesn't solve the issue, because all of a sudden you have turkeys or crows or other birds or animals, or even other like raccoons or possums that can go into the fence, and then they transmit that outside of the fence. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it can be transported either in the fence or out of the fence.
Now we got a COVID for animals.
Correct. Yeah, you could call it that, I guess. Yes.
Do you make them wear masks?
No, we have not gotten to that stage yet.
Take their freedoms away, take them away from school, all that?
But currently, that's one of the biggest issues that is facing the industry, because the regulations are getting just unbelievably restricted.
Now, if you listen to the last couple shows, we've had a couple senators on here who are running for governors, and their biggest thing is let the farmers do the farming, let the growers do they want to deregulate a lot of stuff that's just over-regulated. He also brought it to the fact that when you start regulating the snot out of everything, of course, it pushes the price. Mm-hmm. And then it makes guys want to get out of it, like you're saying right now. So I can see a correlation between we had Jensen on, we had Gazelka on, we're going to have a couple more on. I can see that correlation.
Well, part of the biggest issue is not so much on the elk side of it. Mm-hmm. I think there's been some studies or statistics that have shown elk are not as prevalent to get this disease. And don't get me wrong, they can still get it, but there was some animals out west that were recently involved in a what's called a traceback. In other words, there was a positive animal on a farm, and then they traced back, where all them animals were displaced to. And I believe, like, overall, 360 animals were put down, and only 2 had it. So it's a really an extreme waste of extreme waste of animals, because government regulations do not allow that. The 358 animals that did not have it, government officials don't allow that to be used in the meat industry. So all of them animals are great big hole is dug, and
destroy
they just push them in a hole and bury them. So what has faced our industry is the regulations, and currently we're going through that right now through all the different ag committee meetings and everything that's going on down at the Capitol, where the cervid industry is the most regulated industry of any ag product.
Okay.
Meaning any ag plant, or animal.
So in the agricultural world, you're the guys who are getting the thumb screws.
Yes. Now, when I say that, I would be the first one to admit that a farm, if I was to pick up an animal and move it to, say, for instance, you take an animal from Minnesota and go to Colorado.
Okay.
I will not disagree that I have the ability to transport that disease from one location to the other in a matter of hours. Not necessarily days, because you should be able to make that trip in 15, 20 hours.
Okay.
But I will also agree that if you go to Colorado and hunt that animal and bring it back to Minnesota, you're in the same boat, because this so-called prion doesn't need a live host to live. I mean, if the hunted animal has it, you're bringing that prion back to Minnesota.
So who is your biggest advocate, statewide, federal-wide? Do you have a senator that's pushing on this? Who politically aligns with this deregulation?
Well, there's quite a few of them currently. Currently, we have the Minnesota Deer Hunters. Their executive director, Craig Englund, is pushing extremely hard on this, and he has openly said he wants deer farms out of Minnesota completely. In other words, he wants legislation to come in and do a complete buyout on every deer farm in the state of Minnesota.
So how would that happen? I mean, that sounds just stupid.
I would tend to agree with you in that you'd be looking at, currently there's about 3,300 deer in the state of Minnesota that would have to be bought out. And you're not only buying the animal, but you're buying a viable agricultural business from that individual. So what value do you put on that business?
Yeah, once you take it out, you've removed employees, you've removed gross profit margins, you've removed transportation, all the T&Es. Do they really think that just stopping this is going to... Well, I mean, I get their point. It's kind of a moving target. But how can they just go in and buy you out and do away with it? I mean, it's like what Soros is trying to do with the ammunition plants. We're going to buy everything so you can't have... You'll have a gun, but you can't use nothing in it.
Correct. Here's the biggest issue with that is even if you buy it out, if you look at the statistics of CWD, there are currently 28 states that have CWD in the wild. And there are 18 states that have CWD in farmed animals. Also in Minnesota, since 2010, we have had the numbers could have changed slightly, we have 110 cases, I'm wrong on that. It's 119 cases of wild CWD. Just in 21, there was 32 more added. And I believe that number is included in the 119. And since 2000, we've had 12 farmed individuals come down with CWD. So just in those numbers alone, you tell me, is the problem in the wild or is it in the farm?
Or is it just the problem everywhere?
Now, clearly, I mean, they say, and I don't think they even really know, there are some studies that are being done right now in the farmed industry that show they've always said that if an animal gets CWD, it definitely does die. But there is currently some studies being done that if you feed them animals humic acid, you can make CWD go into a remission state.
Okay.
So rather than DNR's thought on this whole process is if we just kill them all, then we can eradicate the disease. We could maybe be funding some of this where in a endemic area, you go out there and you actually feed them a pellet or somehow get this humic acid into them. You could mix a pellet with this humic acid. It's a powdered product. Just blend it right into the pellet and feed the animal so that eventually you're putting the whole prion into remission in that area. Rather than, I haven't talked to too many hunters about it, but certainly down in our southern Minnesota area, the Fillmore County area, DNR has gone in there and sharp shot thousands of deer, and they used to have a antler restriction that it had to be a 4-point buck or better. And that, I mean, when I say 4 points, I mean 4 points on each side. So you're basically creating a trophy area. Now they've switched gears, and if it's brown, it's down is the philosophy. And they've probably, I mean, I'm no scientist, but I think they have purposely killed more deer than CWD would kill in the next 100 years.
So we're going to get a shot of Moderna for the elk. If they deploy this countermeasure, how are they going to make sure it's working? And what's their testing result? How do they the meniscus of this?
Well, the simplest solution would be, and I'm not saying that this would happen, but just mythically say we do get all the farms bought out. Okay. And in 2025, there are no deer farms. The simplest way to toot your horn would be, let's quit testing deer, and all of a sudden, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. That to me would be the simplest solution. And it's really not if you look at the numbers, I mean, I believe the number is somewhere right around 160, 170 deer in the last 22 years have come down with this disease. And I have no idea how many millions of dollars of taxpayer money has been spent on chronic wasting, and it is not the death all to the deer population.
So are the Dems calling this a crisis now?
There are some Democrats that are pushing this extremely hard, yes.
Any Republicans pushing hard on that?
I don't believe there's any on that side of the fence.
Oh, boy. Here it is, another crisis. Never waste a good crisis, right?
Right. And there's more than, there's all kinds of issues that really, if you go to, there's a new posting out there that it's the American Cervid Alliance is doing some actual facts on CWD.
All right.
To where if you go to CWD Truth, you will learn a lot of the actual important facts of CWD.
So CWD.truth?
CWDtruth.com. All you have to do is search your Facebook deal and go CWD Truth.
Oh, it's Facebook only.
It's Facebook only.
The hate book.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if any other countries, because we're in 51 countries, we have a crap ton of downloads, we got a lot of followers. If this is a thing in other countries, have you heard of that?
They are doing a little bit of testing in. I know there's been a few positive animals in like the Netherlands, but I don't know how widespread. Canada certainly has some testing. Some of your Asian countries don't look for it, so they claim they don't have it. But like I said, if you don't look for something, you'll never find it.
Right.
So
put your head in the sand and it just don't exist.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered our global industry. We've talked local. Anything south of the equator? I mean, is this a Mexico thing? Is this an Antarctic thing? I mean, is there any of that going on in that part of the world?
Not. I guess I don't know that. I don't really pay attention to like the Mexico, South America type. I don't know if they actually look for it there.
Right. Fewer regulations.
Right.
And again, if we could get this deployed, this white powder, this substance, in a feeding or in a something, then they would pretty much put an end to this, correct?
Well, when I say this humic acid thing, it's going through it. There's a positive farm over in Wisconsin that's doing a whole lot of testing on how they can put an end to the CWD. You know, the old adage is if CWD, if you get it, you die. Meaning, if a deer gets it, this would put an end to that and actually give you some sort of a solution other than
death,
just putting the animal down.
So let's say they catch this CWD. What are you going to see in your inventory? I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to start losing hair? What happens?
Well, eventually you would end up. Eventually, the animal will die. Now, to my knowledge, scientifically, no whitetail deer has ever contracted the disease and lived for more than 36 months. So eventually, the animal will basically lose weight and die. And under Board of Animal Health regulations, we are required to every animal that dies gets tested.
Ah,
So if that animal died,
there's a postmortem. Yeah.
right, basically within 7 to 10 days, the Board of Animal Health would know that. They would get the test results, and then clearly you'd end up being a quarantine farm.
Do you have a tracking system? Does the government watch your inventory?
Yes, annually, every year, I am required to fill out a what's called an annual inventory.
Okay.
Every animal has got 2 forms of tags on it, a federal ID number. There is since the day that animal is born and tagged, there is a ID number that's associated with that animal, and it carries that number forever, for life.
Is there an RFID tracking number that can be grabbed from a satellite?
You can do that, but it's not a required tag.
I don't know.
There's just a federal plastic dangle tag.
Okay, so it's just visual.
Yes, it's just a visual number.
Will they require you in the future so they can monitor your inventory? Almost like Nazi Germany 1939. We're going to watch your intakes, your outtakes. Is that a thing?
I don't know if it could get to that. Currently, in this year's negotiations at the Capitol, they are trying to say that all farm deer are going to be required by October of 2022 to be annually tested for CWD.
What's the test cost?
No, well, it's not so much that the cost.
Okay.
It's currently the only validated test through USDA. The animal needs to be dead to test. It has.
Okay.
So there's no validated test that will actually do what some of the politicians are proclaiming or trying to get done. There is a study being done by the University of Minnesota that there's a particular individual that is saying that he can pick up CWD prions in soil, dirt,
droppings.
Okay,
all right. Urinary type of things.
Yeah, he can pick it up on any surface.
Well, that would be a win, wouldn't it?
Well, it would be. It certainly would be a win, but it's not a validated test, and USDA will not recognize it.
It hasn't been paid up yet.
Correct.
So when you pay enough, now that test will be active.
Well, I believe this study has already taken about $3-4 million and paid up, and it's still not. It's not accurate enough. The sensitivity has not been proven. So then all of a sudden you get into the issue where today I say this farm is positive, and then after that animal is put down and tested under the approved method, it's negative. What kind of a snowball effect have you just caused now? So the accuracy of the test is not validated, and that is why USDA will not recognize it.
Well, there's no doubt that we're going to be hitting some farmers in the deer in the hoofed stuff. What have you got advice for them?
To be 100% honest.
No, I want you to lie.
Even in my scenario, my son works for Elk Marketing, and I obviously clearly have over the years had him help me on the farm.
Okay.
If I was gone next week, I think it would take about 7 to 10 days, and every animal would be at the processing plant, and it would be over. It is the problem that you have is if you go into this industry, you don't know, if you're in Minnesota, you don't know if you're going to be in business next month because of the regulations. Recently, last October, most every deer farm in the state of Minnesota all of a sudden was slapped with a deer ban movement from the DNR. And this is during the prime time when all ranches and producers sell their trophy bucks to different hunt ranches and hunt facilities. And all of a sudden, we get a stop movement from the DNR.
Okay.
The particular instance that created this stop movement, the Board of Animal Health found what ruling they wanted to. There was 5 animals that were purchased from a farm in Wisconsin. And those 5 animals were moved into Minnesota. Board of Animal Health, within hours, knew where all 5 animals were. 2 of the 5 were already deceased and tested negative. I believe if I remember correctly, one of the animals had to be put down and tested. Well, in the end, during this Board of Animal Health study, they came to the conclusion within hours of finding out about these 5 animals moving into the state, that it was not a big problem. However, DNR seen it as a issue, and they wanted to stop all movement of animals in the state of Minnesota. So what that caused is every hunting ranch, I mean, we don't have a lot of them in Minnesota, but I know of a couple that one ranch had 70 hunts all set up for November, and he buys all of his deer from other producers. So all of a sudden there's 50 or 60, 70 deer that cannot be moved to his hunting ranch, and he was financially squeezed to where he may not be able to recover out of that deal. And there's just no science behind those that type of ban. I mean, that would be like saying we walked into a bank and at 10 o'clock and at 10:30 somebody came and robbed it, where you and I get arrested for being at the bank at 10. We're a suspect.
Sure. Kind of a guilt by association.
Yep.
Well, let's Jen Psaki back to the beginning of where can we get this? That was a circle back joke. Jen Psaki. Okay. Let's circle back to where we can get this product.
Okay. HealthyElkMeat.com and 763-428-8561.
Do you have a Facebook presence for this company?
I do not.
Okay. So web it is. Are we wrap this up, or what are you thinking?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues where the he said, she said on the regulations is going to cause a whole lot of problems, and we'll just see where it all washes out. I hope that the current ag committee that is getting a lot of hearings on this deal will see some of the mudslinging that's going on and use some science to try and help combat this whole issue. Because like I say, it's not the death all. It is not going to decimate the whitetail deer wild herd in the state of Minnesota.
Be sure to tell your people that you do business with that you're going to air this in the world. I would really want them to chime in. They can hit me on the hate book page. They can hit me, well, that's pretty much where I'm at. And chime in, because it's important to hear other people's stories. When we air this, make sure you put out in your communicator your words, or however that's going to be, and say, let's make sure that we can get some ears, because there's a whole lot of senators in this show.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're listening to it and they listen to their own stuff, maybe we can get the eyes and ears of someone to say, yeah, this sounds kind of stupid. I mean, let's not choke you guys out. They did it in the car business with the emissions testing. They're still trying to do that again. We're also trying to push that through, and everything's got to turn political.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree.
So we are 25 minutes into the second segment. I think we should pull the pin here. What's your thought?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Scott, thanks for enlightening us newbies in the elk meat world what's going on, because, unless you put a face to it, nobody hears it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, HuttCast is going to pull the pin at 25:18. And thanks. We'll be back next week. And that's a wrap for HuttCast. HuttCast is, again, a pragmatic approach to seeing things how some people see them. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up on the Facebook site. Again, for HuttCast, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.